Funny when people find out I'm a pastor, right? It's one thing to be a Christian. It's a whole different story. You're a pastor, and they change their way they talk, and they change the way they look at me, and how they respond to me. And yet God has called us to go out and to share our faith. Guys, God has given you a story. Don't let the reason of them not wanting to hear it keep you from telling it. Does that make sense? People should be our deciding factor. Our love for God and our love for them should be what drives. Now notice this. Notice what happened in Paul's life. He says, when I returned to Jerusalem and was praying at the temple, I fell into a trance, and I saw the Lord speaking, and quick, he said to me, leave Jerusalem immediately, because they will not accept your testimony about me. Then the Lord said to me, go, I will send you away, far away, to who? The Gentiles. All the non-Jewish people, you're going to go and tell them about Jesus Christ. And now notice how the crowd responds to this. This idea of, we're God's chosen people. We're the Jewish people. God comes to us first. We are His special people. Notice when Paul says, now I'm going to go tell the Jewish people, and Jesus told me to do it. Notice what he says. Notice what the crowd does. The crowd, listening to Paul, listened to him until he said this, and then they raised their voices and shouted, rid the earth of him. He is not fit to leave. And they were shouting and throwing off their cloaks, and they were flinging dust into the air. Isn't that like a pretty huge response, right? It seems like an overreaction, but these people were zealous for their legalistic laws rather than a heart for God. And they were saying, get rid of him. Rid him from the earth. And it says the commander ordered Paul to be taken into the barracks. And notice what happens next is that he's about to be flogged. And Paul tells the Roman guard, he says, is it okay for you to go ahead and flog me, even though I have not even had a trial? And so Paul, in the next few chapters of Acts, you see him going under one trial after another. What do God's people look like? They have a heart for God. They have a passion for others. Now notice this, number 3. They have a passion to follow God no matter what. You might even write off to the side, no matter what the cost. People who follow God will follow Him no matter what happens. You remember what's happening to Paul? You remember what has happened? I'm going to tell you again in a second what he went through in his lifetime. In the Bible, in Acts chapter 9, we're going to go back a little bit. Ananias is told by God to go and tell Paul all this stuff. Remember, he went and he prayed on him, and he could see again. And then he told him, you're going to be, to go out and tell all the world about Jesus Christ. Well, Ananias, before he ever heard of Paul, God spoke to him, and he says, Ananias, I want you to go, and I want you to meet this guy named Paul of Tarsus, Saul of Tarsus, and I want you to tell him about Jesus. And Ananias was very reluctant. You guys remember the story? Ananias did not want to go see this guy Paul. Why? Because Saul had a bad reputation. Paul had a bad reputation of persecuting the church. He didn't want to go over there and tell him about Jesus. But notice what it says on your outline. The Lord said to Ananias, go. This man is my chosen instrument to carry my name before the Gentiles and their kings and before the people of Israel. And I will show him how much he must suffer for my name. Now, Ananias says, look, he's going to go to the Jews. He's going to go appear before the Gentiles. He's even going to appear before their kings. And he is going to suffer a whole lot for the name of Jesus. Now, let me just kind of go through this. If you want to write this down, you can bullet point it, write it down. Paul arrives in Jerusalem, right? He's arrested at the temple. You just saw what happened at the temple. They were stirring up the crowd. They grabbed him. They put him in chains. They put him in the barracks. They arrested him so that they can find out what he was talking about. He gives his defense before the people. He says, brothers, let me say something to you. And he tells them about Jesus Christ and about his experience with God. And not only that, he's in prison there So he's put in jail, and he has to give his testimony to others. Now, not only did he tell the Jewish people that were there, and the Sanhedrin, those people, that religious court of law, he goes on to tell these other people. Now, I just want to share with you a few of the names that he tells. Antonius Felix. He was appointed the governor of Judea in AD 52. He has to go before the governor and tell his story. And you see in Acts chapter 22 and following, he's telling the same story over and over. This is what's happened to me. It's interesting about this guy named Felix is that his wife was the granddaughter of some pretty famous people. I just want to share that with you. Something I found out as I was studying. Antony and Cleopatra. You guys know who that is? You've heard those names before? Well, this guy, Felix, that he went before, Felix married the great-granddaughter of Antony and Cleopatra. Pretty amazing, huh? How history has shown these stories to be true. Porcius Festus, this was another person he had to appear in before at the end of Acts. He was the successor of Felix. And then he went to King Herod Agrippa II, who was the son of Agrippa I, the grandson of Artabulus, and the great-grandson of somebody you probably heard of over history is Herod the Great. Right? These people were actual people. They actually lived. And Paul was told beforehand, right? This guy Ananias, God tells Ananias, this is what Paul's going to have to do. He's going to have to suffer a lot. And he's going to go before the Jewish people, and they're going to reject him. And he's going to go before the non-Jewish people, and they're going to reject him. I'm going to show him exactly how much he must suffer for my name. Now, notice the point again. People who have a passion for God will follow him no matter what the cost. I just kind of want to show you what how he summarizes his life. Now notice on your outline in 2 Corinthians chapter 11, the Apostle Paul was talking about people who were following God, and then he says, look, this is my story. Now notice what he says. I have worked much harder and been in prison more frequently and been flogged more severely and been exposed to death again and again. 5 times I received from the Jews 40 lashes minus 1. You remember that movie, The Passion of the Christ, where Jesus was flogged, he was whipped, right? And they would whip him, and 39 times, 39 lashes. That's kind of what Paul's saying. I was whipped just like that. 5 different times for following Christ. Notice he says, 3 times I was beaten with rods. Once I was stoned with rocks. 3 times I was shipwrecked. I spent a night and a day in the open sea. I have been constantly on the move. I have been in danger from rivers, in danger from bandits, in danger from my own countrymen. Even the Jewish people were after me, he says. Notice what he says. In danger from the Gentiles. Paul couldn't catch a break. No matter where he went to tell people about Jesus, they were after him. In danger in the city, in danger in the country, in danger at sea, in danger from false brothers. I have labored and toiled and have gone without sleep. I have known hunger and thirst, and I have often gone without food. I have been cold and naked. This follower of Christ. He says not only the Jewish people were after me, the Gentile people were after me, but also false brothers in the church were after me, making up stories about me. People who went to church with me were lying about me. Notice what this says. He says, besides everything else, I face the daily pressure of my concern for all the churches. Notice what he says. Who is weak? And I do not feel weak. Who is led into sin? And I do not inwardly lust or burn? If I must boast in the things that show my weakness. Now, Paul didn't tell this story so he could say, look at me, look how great I am. You know, if you want to be a follower of Christ, you got to get whooped on. Paul didn't say that. He didn't say you have to go without food. You know, to be poor and go without food. He didn't say that you had to be shipwrecked and spend a day and a night in the sea. The reason Paul tells us that he went through all of this was that he says this, I will boast of the things that show my weakness.